one of the missing, Eddie Cochran. Eddie Cochran. In the summer of 1958, Eddie Cochran is another child that is one of the missing, but we're shown that he is very much not missing. He is absolutely dead without a... He's dead. Because we get to see him die. We watch him die. Because Eddie is a runaway. A few of the kids at the school at Richie is aware that Eddie will not go home because of his stepdad if he does something that would get him in trouble. Now, a few months prior to him running away this time, Eddie's younger brother Dorsey was killed by their stepfather. And we're led to believe that it's because of the influence of it that this happens. So with this not being that far in the past, with this being very recent and very much on Eddie's mind, he just doesn't go home. He runs away to the canal, and he's at the canal where he feels safe. And he's drifting off to sleep when he hears a voice. He doesn't just hear a voice, he hears Dorsey. And he looks down and he actually sees Dorsey. And Dorsey says, "Come, Eddie. Come with me to the sewers. We can float." And Eddie doesn't want any part of that. What the hell are you talking about? Dorsey, you're dead. And he gets up and he runs. And he's running. And as he's running from this apparition of his deceased brother, he becomes aware of this overwhelming stench, something horrible, something rotten, something. And he turns around to see where is this originating from, and it's no longer Dorsey chasing him. It's the creature from the Black Lagoon. And so he runs. And earlier that day, there was a bench that had gotten knocked over. And due to it being night, he doesn't notice the bench flipped over in the grass, and he trips. And the creature from the Black Lagoon catches up to him. It seizes him and picks him up. Now, Eddie is a rational child. He goes, "There's no way. This has to be a costume. This isn't the real creature from the Black Lagoon. There's no such fucking thing." And so he's reaching, trying to find the costume zipper, which he doesn't find because it's not a costume. This is the creature from the Black Lagoon. And it bites into his neck. And he's dying, still trying to find a zipper that isn't there. His last words are, "You're not real." Even though it's very much real because it's very much killing him. And it drags his body into the sewers, through the canal. Now, Mike Hanlon, the historian, he goes out by the canal a few days later. And while he's there, he feels off. Something's wrong. He picks up the switchblade with the initials EC carved into it. And he notices the marks. He notices the imprints in the grass that look like somebody got dragged towards the canal. Now, because he didn't know Eddie Cochran and he never finds out about him, he doesn't put two and two together and realize how horrific what he's seeing really is. He just takes the switchblade, which is kind of just a subtle symbolic thing because he's the historian. He collects artifacts of Derry's past, and that's exactly what he's doing now. So he leaves and he goes back home just knowing that something felt off, not knowing the actual horror that had just transpired. Now, another one of the missing from 1958 is Patrick Hocksetter. Patrick Hocksetter is Beverly Marsh witnesses him getting taken by it. And so she's the one to confirm to everybody, oh yeah, I remember that. I saw him get taken. So Patrick Hocksetter is a very, very memorable character. Not in a good way. You see, Patrick Hocksetter is a psychopath. He's a slopialist, to be exact. And that means he doesn't believe anyone else is actually real. They're just kind of extensions of him. Like, it's without him, they would cease to exist. And if he would die, then everyone else would die as well. Because without him, how could anyone else exist if he's the only real one? Now, no one knows just exactly how fucked up Patrick is. His parents are only a little bit worried about him because he keeps bringing home these drawings of brown and black loops, the same kind every day. And they're curious. They're asking him, well, Patrick, what is this today? And he's like, oh, today's a dog. And then the next day, well, Patrick, this is really similar to yesterday's. What is it now? It's a tree. And they're kind of concerned, but they don't know the full extent. The teachers kind of know something else, something more. They're kind of aware of it to a deeper degree because Patrick will kill flies, keep the bodies in a case, get another student's attention, and show them this case of dead flies. And they know to keep him seated away from others because he does things like this. There's no explanation for why he does it. He just does these things and they're aware of it. So they try to keep him away from the general vicinity of the other students. Patrick also has another thing that he keeps hitting, only he kills small animals, such as cats and dogs, using a refrigerator that he found by the dump near the Barrens. And Henry threatens to tell people about it. So, the afternoon that he gets killed and taken by it, he's going to clean the refrigerator out so he can't get caught. And when he opens it, there are leeches inside of it. Leeches with wings. And they fly at him. And one of them lands on his hand and begins to suck the blood. And he can see the blood that is sucking inside the leech because it's kind of transparent. And it sucks until it bursts. And that freaks the hell out of him. And then a lot more start flying at him. And he's struggling against these flying leeches that are sucking his blood. His essential life force. His essential reality of him. They're sucking it from him. And so, I read that on TV tropes about the deeper fear of it. And so they're sucking into their verse. They're sucking all his blood. And while he's going through that, it emerges. And because Patrick has no tangible fear, like you see, the reason it kind of attacks children more is because children have fears that are like easy. Like, oh, I'm afraid of clowns. Oh, I'm afraid of Dracula. Oh, I'm afraid of the teenage werewolf. No, I'm afraid of the mummy. Well, I'm more afraid of... You see, it's things like that. Things that are just easy to shapeshift into. When it tries to do that to Patrick, there's no concrete idea that Patrick has that he's afraid of because, remember, Patrick he's a literal psychopath. He doesn't have such feelings. He doesn't fear anything. So, it approaches him as this amorphous, non-setting face of clay, and it tells him hello and goodbye. And the voice he hears is a distorted, not really one person's voice, not a distinct voice. Beverly, who is hiding, overhears it taking him, but the voice she hears is her father's voice, and it drags Patrick off into the sewers, and Patrick loses consciousness. Patrick wakes up later in the sewers, and it begins to feed. Now Patrick is a terrifying. He's a person that you could reasonably be afraid of. I mean, at least Eddie Cochran was, because when he visits the Tracker Brothers baseball field as an adult, and he sees Betty Ripson, he's scared. He's scared seeing the corpse of Betty Ripson, but he isn't terrified until he sees Patrick Hocksetter coming to try to talk to him. That's when he decides, no, I've seen enough. Shit is out of hand, I need to go. He also recognizes Patrick Hocksetter's corpse in the sewers when they're going towards his lair as a child in 1958. He's the one that brings it to everyone else's attention. Hey, guys, there's a dead body right there, and it's Patrick Hocksetter. You see, in the movies, he's not in the 90s miniseries. He is in the 2017 version. But not really. I mean, the characterization it's not Patrick Hocksetter. So, I mean, it's him in name. It's not him in. It's not like true to the source material. You feel me? Like, it's a different character entirely. So, Patrick Hocksetter also had a brother. This is where, I mean, this is what makes him such a disturbing figure. Patrick Hocksetter has a brother, and Patrick Hocksetter is like maybe 5. He's in kindergarten. And he's home one day along with his little brother Avery. Avery's a newborn. And Patrick suddenly has this idea. Wait a minute. If I'm real, and I was a newborn before, what if Avery real? What if he is real, and that makes me less real? If he knows that that's something that he can't allow. So Patrick goes into his room where Avery is asleep in his crib, and he takes a pillow and smothers Avery to death. And he walks out and eats his cookies as if nothing happened. And Patrick never feels guilt or regret about doing that, because in Patrick's mind, it's what he had to do to not lose his sense of being real. No one was going to take that from him. So Patrick, whenever Patrick does get taken by it, you kind of want him to die horribly. It's just the way that he does die. It's kind of it's kind of really bad. It's probably one of the worst ones. Probably one of the worst ways that a child dies in 1958. I mean, not in terms of like pain, but in terms of just like the disgusting nature of it. Because when you look at it, Patrick was kind of a disgusting person internally.